right. Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we finished up the bare essentials to release the version 1 of the Hunter Deadly Decoy plugin. Specifically, we localized the plugin, we added the ability, adding the ability to easily translate it, and we added some basic saving and loading of settings so that you could move the position of it, and that would be remembered the next time the plugin was loaded. This time, I'm going to work on the look and feel of the plugin by adding numerical displays, which has been a voice in my ear request that I want to get finished with. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And first, let's go ahead and review what the Deadly Decoy plugin can already do. Let's see. All right. Now, I do have attempted to turn on the closed captionings again, so if you see the CC button in Twitch, let me know. Hopefully it works. All right. In the meantime, let's go into our plugins manager here. We have the Hunter Deadly Decoy version 1. We can go ahead and load that up. All right. So, the Hunter Deadly Decoy, if you don't remember, is designed to give you a visual indication of both how much time the decoy has left. It explodes after 15 seconds, and how much health is left. The health of the decoy depends on the level of the hunter, as we discovered a few weeks ago. And so one of the things that we can do in our debug mode is to go ahead and damage that decoy. I'll go ahead and do 500 damage to it, and we can see that the damage is outpacing the time. If the damage kept up at that pace, the decoy would die before it explodes, and that'd be very sad. We want it to explode. Okay, so that's a quick review, and we also add the ability to move it around in case your hunter wants it somewhere else. We can move it, lock it in place, and that's the part that gets saved out that we did last time. Awesome. No CC. All right, well, I tried toggling it off and on again, and we'll see what happens. I feel like everything else is working. Let's see. It's captioning. Let's see. It's got a channel to OBS. What, am I not logged in properly? I mean, it says it's okay. Yeah. Well, we'll hope. Okay. Service. Okay, so now that we've seen what the Deadly Decoy plugin can do, one of the things that was asked for by my in-house hunter is that this ticking down bar is fine, but wouldn't it be great to have some sort of numerical display? 15, 14, 13, 12, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing I want to do today, is put a display up on this icon here. And the icon is being artificially stretched in size, so I'm hoping the label might be stretchable as well. We'll find out on that. And then Thurlor also suggested we can use the same kind of cooling down sectional display here, where it's divided into parts. We might be able to use that to, instead of a numerical display, it might be a, what do we call that? A clock, like sweeping display. That might be a cool option as well. Oh, Exo says, stretch labels, they fight back. All right, we'll see if we have a challenge in store. All right, so let's go ahead and browse on in. We're gonna go to Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, and my plugins are in Cube Plugins. It's me. So we're gonna go into the Hunter Deadly Decoy, and in there, let's go into that to-do file where we kind of track what's going on. And the first thing I wanna, Exogenesis calls it a radial cooldown. I like it. So one of the first things I want to pull out was an errata. Thurlor made a note that I wanted to call out. Last time, a question came up about the get game time, and I foolishly answered before even looking at the documentation, let alone having a deeper knowledge of this. So Thurlor points out, and I'll just highlight this on my other camera here. Excellent. So the get game time, he says, does have millisecond granularity, but the value that you get within a event handler is always going to be the same value. So if you need to measure the time between two events, you need to be in two separate event handlers. And the way he says, one of the ways you can do that is you go ahead and enable set once update on a control, call get game time in that controls update, and then you can have a difference between two event handler times. So in one event handler, get the start time, but in the second event handler, get the stop time. So that will, of course, add a little padding time in there because it's not only the time it took to do the thing, but also a little bit of time for the game to call get update. But as we've seen, controls tend to controls tend to have their update function called a dozen times a second, maybe more. So you're going to get reasonable results that way. One of the things you can do is time how long it takes you to between two successive get update calls and kind of factor that in. Oh, okay, we'll just shave off a 10th or a 20th of a second for that get update call. And that's going to be machine dependent. It's going to be system dependent. So you'll want to do that measurement on your machine to get a sense of what the values mean for you. Okay. Okay, and that's the other thing. Yeah, the precision of this method is limited by the frame rate in your Lotro client. Absolutely. So I just wanted to call that out because I did last week, I assumed the function only had second precision, and that's why you weren't seeing changes between the calls to it. And so this is a much better explanation of what's going on. All right. Now, in general, that's probably a good thing from a plugin's perspective. You don't want every call that you make back to Lotro to have a huge performance penalty. So if Lotro can just say, this is the time, anytime someone asks for it, it doesn't need to recalculate that. Just like if you ask, what's the current screen size? Well, the screen size isn't going to change very much in your function. So Lotro probably just has a cached value of that. So anyway, caching is generally good, frustrating in this case. Awesome. So there are a couple notes in here, ideas on things to do for Deadly Decoy. In fact, this whole file is about Deadly Decoy. One of the things, yeah, this is the one that I was specifically talking about. And this one, awesome. So numeric cooldown and radial cooldown. And we'll see how far we get with that today. Okay, and of course, other things to get to when time allows. There's always going to be a list of things that you want to get to. You really just have to kind of prioritize, pick and choose, and try to get a feature out there. A feature someone else can use is better than 10 really cool ideas that never get shipped. All right, so one of the things that I'm trying to get good about is showing a little bit more source control on stream. So let me pull up my favorite source control interface, or at least my favorite right now. It's called Fork, F-O-R-K, and it is going to show the Git repository under the covers, or at least it will if it finishes loading. Sweet. We can see the last thing that I committed was just some of the bits associated with the 1.0 release. Some images that we were uploading to the Lotro interface, and the actual description, and some updates to the README file. So let's ignore those dtracker to-dos. All right, so to-do file update. We'll just take a snapshot of these changes here. And this change right here, that's what allows us to see the debug options in the options menu. So I don't want to commit that. I don't want to accidentally ship that. That's basically just for me and any of you who want to try it out. Okay. So now that we know what we're going to do, we're going to try to show the whole number of seconds remaining as text. Let's see if we can do that. So, oops. Let's go ahead and open up. Now, one of the things that's on that to-do list is reorganizing the code. That hasn't happened yet. So right now, there's a lot going on in the main file and a lot going on in the 100 Deadly Decoy window. 100 Deadly Decoy window is where we want to start, though. So let's begin. The constructor is where we're creating all of the little bits and pieces. So we can see we've got the image, and we can see we've got a timer control, and the health as well. And those are the three specific things that we're seeing. So let's go ahead and add another one. It'll be text. And to start, we just want to put something on the screen to make sure we're on the right path. So it's going to be self dot timer text equals, well, what is this going to be? Let me go ahead and pull up, well, that's going to be a little bit bigger than I meant, the documentation. Excellent. Okay, so in the documentation, we want a label. So we know there is a turbine.ui.label, but sometimes it's nice to check if there's any Lotro customized or skinned things. There's no more specific label, so we can go ahead and go with this. And we can see some sample code here actually. Label equals turbine.ui.label. Perfect, that's exactly what we want to do. Now the other thing, we can double check that we are in our main file, main.lua, that we are in fact importing turbine.ui. Now, we were already doing that for other things, but that sometimes catches me up where I won't have the correct import statement already in there. And then Lotro, or the Lua interpreter in Lotro, will rightfully say, I don't know what you're talking about. Now that we have this control, we do want to remember to set the parent, because remember, a control won't get drawn unless it's parented by a top-level control somewhere up the chain. So the label could be parented by a button, the button could be parented by a tree view, the tree view could be parented by something, but somewhere in that chain, there has to be a top-level control. For instance, a window is a top-level control. There's also a Lotro window, which is also, by definition, a top-level control. So if it's not parented by a window, we're in trouble. Now, we are a window. Here, we can see in the constructor that we are a window. And so set parent self is going to make sure that this image control is parented by a top-level control. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and do self as well. And then anything else we want to do? Well, self.timerText. Let's set the text. Whoops. Now we know the set text will take a string. We'll localize that in a minute, but for now this is just a test. We want to go ahead and see that somewhere. And in fact, we could go ahead and run this and see what happens. Or I should say reload the plugin and launch that. Awesome, we can see big old test right there. Now that's pretty cool. It's not quite where I would like it to be, or the color I would like it to be necessarily, but we can see we're on the right track. And it kind of looks scaled. All right, let's go ahead and maybe make it do changing stuff. So we know it's always going to start at 15. Awesome. And we know we want it to update with the number of whole seconds left. So in the update function, which is going to get called a lot, we want to go ahead and in this function, which says we still have time left, we want to go ahead and update this as well. So we want, let's see, we've got the delta time, which is a number of seconds. Really, we just want that, don't we? Now, as it is, it's probably going to be a decimal number. It's going to have a fractional part. So this is probably going to be hilariously wrong. But let's give it a try. Delta time. Sure, let's do it. Unload, reload, and launch. Oh yes, that's delightful. Oh, that's fun. It's fun just to watch. Okay, so I think we have identified our first problem. It's counting up, not down. So we do want to do 15 minus that value. Baz says, I see nothing wrong. I mean, yes, that could be how many seconds have passed, but I think it'll be more intuitive for it to be how many seconds are left. So in that, we want to go ahead and say, and we can even declare this as a local variable just to kind of give a name to it. Local time left equals minus delta time. And I say because we are going to be shown based on, let's see, is deadly. Okay, there we go. Expire time, we've already saved it off. So we know that that's going to be available to us. So we can go ahead and say expired time minus delta time. Let's give it a try. Nope. I forgot to use the handy dandy thing there. So let's go ahead and set timer text. Yeah, we'll do that first. In fact, let's just separate those together. They're completely separate ideas. Okay, one more time. Oh, delightful. Okay, so we can see now we have a number that is counting down instead of counting up. I'm curious about off by 1 errors, so we'll just let that go. Oh, delightful. Okay, so we saw when it hit 0, it ended. Now, we do have a design choice. A integer-only value would tick once per second, roughly, and would probably be enough precision. But it might be kind of cool to kind of transition into also including tenths of a second, maybe the whole time. Maybe you get less than 5 seconds, it gets you that more precision to feel like, oh, I gotta get going. Let's just start with how do we get the number to a specific precision? Well, that's a good question. Every language has a different way of doing this, and I gotta tell you, I don't remember Lua's way of doing this. Lua 5.1 reference 5.1 round to, yeah, sure, 2 decimal places. Let's see what the internet has to say about that. Oh, that's silly. I mean, it's normal. Let's see if there's anything more built in. Oh, that's funny. Sorry. So we have 2 competing answers here. The Lua documentation, or sorry, Lua users has a sample where you do some multiplication, do some division, do some rounding, and you get an answer. And then you have a Stack Overflow answer, which is just kind of copying out, which is like, if you call the string format function and ask it to truncate to a specific amount, you'll get a string back, which is, fair enough. Local. Exactly. Thurlor is giving the steps here in a more Englishy, written out way. So you can get arbitrary levels of precision. Now, the one thing I don't know is, would you have any trailing zeros if you have this decimal number that you manipulated, but it's still fundamentally a decimal number? So I'm going to wimp out. I'm going to do the silly string formatting thing. Oh, it's even right here. Neat. Time left decimal. No. Time left rounded equals string dot format. And then we'll go ahead and. Interesting. I don't know my string format manipulators very well, so I'm just a little out of my depth there. All right, time left rounded. Let's see what that looks like. Now, I'm skipping the 2 number here because we are calling a function that expects a string text. And so we already needed to coerce the number into text, and this is great. Let's give that a try. Now, there weren't any errors loading it. That's always promising. Okay, So we have just a single decimal point counting down. I'm kind of evaluating that. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't know that it's necessary to have it that level of precision the entire time. I think my initial theory was probably correct. If time left, local precision equals 0. If time left is less than 10, then precision equals 1. And we're just going to go ahead and only show the decimals when we get less than some number. Actually, how about less than 5? And then we'll do actually very similar to what they were doing in this example, where you just use string concatenation to build up an arbitrary precision based on something. Let's give that a try. Okay, awesome. So we can see the number counting down. And ideally, what's going to happen is if it's below 5, we're going to start seeing that decimal precision. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So other than the fact that the color's wrong, the position's wrong, and the parenting might be wrong, this is great. I'm liking this. Oh, Thurlor has suggested the set font style. Let's take a look at that. So in the labels, if we come into the label methods, style, we can see there's a function called set font style. And this is going to take a number. That's great. This is the place where I really actually kind of like the documentation on the wiki's version a little bit better. So I'm going to pop that open here. Again, that's lotrointerface.com/wiki/lotrointerface_wiki. Of course it is. We can come on in here to the Turbine UI, and in there we can come into label. Thurlor says that's the only style. Yeah, that's fair. Set font style. Okay. Oh, well, that's funny. Oftentimes it'll give the values available for that. Font style. Yeah. Oh well. My hopes have been dashed. What about here? Font style. Oh, hey. There is. Okay, so none or outline. See, there's a second one. Oh, okay. I had gone too far deep. Okay. Font style. There we go. So, cool. All right. So, as Thurlor mentioned, outline is the only thing other than none, but none is a value. So you can say outline or nothing. Sweet. Let's do it. So we are back in label. We're back in set font style. We are opening a random text file. Let's not do that. Cool. So back in self.timer text, we can go ahead and set font style. And we have turbine.ui.fontstyle.outline. Very cool. Let's see what that looks like. Not surprisingly, it's given that a lovely outline, which makes it so much more readable. Although the position is still maybe a little off, I am very happy with how that looks. Thanks for pointing that out, Thurlor. You can change the outline color. That's funny. Wow, that's very exciting. Okay, so one thing that I think is also possible to label is possibly setting what is the name? Alignment. There we go. So that's the alignment of the text within the label control. So what I would like to try is content alignment. I'm curious, if I make the label the same size as the image, can I get that text centered without working too hard at it? So, self.timer set size to self.imageControl get size. That's probably not going to work, but, you know, we'll see. And then, all right, I gotta figure out, is that gonna do what I want it to do? I don't think it does, actually. because I think it'll degrade that. But we'll leave it for a sec. Self.timer. The other thing I wanted to do was we want to go ahead and set the layout. All right, set text alignment. Or we want to try this anyway. I haven't played with text alignment very much, so this is a path of discovery here. We can see the sample does have turbine UI content alignment though. Middle center, that sounds delightful. Let's do that. We'll just copy paste it right out of there. Oh, neat. Okay, so we gave the text control the same size as the icon, and then we said be in the center, and it seems to be doing a really nice job even when it switches to longer. Now, the wobbling back and forth, I'm not truly happy with. I think, the perfectionist in me would love it if it was a little bit more left aligned or right aligned, but it's definitely not terrible, especially for a first attempt with a couple of function calls. So I think we're going to call that spiffing. All right, so I should ask my resident in-house hunter, how's this look? You think so?
Yeah, in the middle is hard.
I'm getting a suggestion that in the middle is actually a little bit harder to read. So let's come to the content alignment and see what other options we have. Ooh, neat. There's a bottom right, which is what the voice in my ear was whispering might be a little bit easier. Let's just change the alignment to bottom right and see how does that look. Oh, interesting. Now, because I didn't provide any margin, I just said you're exactly as big as the thing you're in. You can see the edge of the text is brushing up against the edge. I think I don't like how that looks. So let's refine this a little bit further. We want to go ahead and, okay, so now local image width equals 32, local image height equals 32, and then we can go ahead and use width and height here, and we can go ahead and set width to be image height minus 2. We can go ahead and set self.timer text set height, whoopsie, height, and again image, whoopsie, that will catch me later, minus 2. And then we can go ahead and even set the position to be 1 over and 1 down. So self.timer text set position to be 1, 1. And that'll give us a 1 pixel border, essentially, a margin around the outside. Let's see what that looks like. And let's look at chat, which I have not been. Oh, that's not what I was expecting at all. I'll have to come back to that. All right, Thurlor. Let's see. We can change that line color. We can just append a space to the text. That would be a simpler way to do what I'm trying to do. Oh, and Baz is pointing out that if I used a monospaced font, fixed sys 15, that could also give a less jumpy visual. That's a very good point. Oh, hey. Apparently my kinship has a house. That's pretty cool. Good job, everyone. Okay. Let's look at what I just did. What I just did was probably not enough margin, so I'm going to play around with that for just a minute. But I do like the easy version of just adding a space at the end. I also like the idea of doing a monospaced font. As a programmer, I do love me some monospaced fonts, and yeah, that jumping around is just a result of a not monospaced. Okay, so let's do 2 things. Let's go ahead and pretend like we didn't do this margin work right here. We got a request from Little Redhead to see what the top right looks like. Let's go ahead and string format back. A lot of space there. And finally, let's check fonting. Now, we do have a set font and set font style. I assume style is things like bold. Oh no, that's the outline. So set font. Excellent. Do we have any options here? We might. Well, we have a font style. That's going to be the none of the outline. Let's come on back to label and see if set font in this one gives us examples. Neat. Thank you, Lotro interface. Now, I guess the real question is there a font in here somewhere that I missed? Doesn't look like. Okay, so we have the fixed sys 15 that was recommended by Baz. Let's take a look and see what that would look like. So that seems like a higher priority thing. Self.timer text set font. That's not going to work by itself though, I imagine. There we go. Turbine.ui.lotro.fixedsys. UI.lotro, really? Was I looking in the wrong place? I was! Excellent. I'm glad that's here too. Okay, that's a funny thing. What did I do? Oh, I didn't set the size. When I changed this, I blew away the setting of the size. So self.timer text, we want to go ahead and set the size of that to be, for now, the image control get size. We'll come back to that. Oh, I did forget the font, didn't I? Well, it seems to be working, oddly enough. But excellent, yes, I should have included font in that. Oh, XZ says, hi, is it normal that downloading an HD pack takes longer than downloading 30 gigs, aka the game? It's not an in-game issue. It's XZ, I don't have a good answer for that, except that it is entirely possible that the server is returning the files more slowly than it otherwise could, just as a throttling measure to prevent the server from being overloaded by too many requests. I had that problem today when I was downloading a file from some random place. Oh, SmartPress. I was trying to download the PDF, and it was like a 10 megabyte PDF, not big, and it was just coming really slowly because the server, had no reason to deliver it fast. It was just, for archival purposes. So the server doesn't always return things as fast as it can, and that's not an unnormal thing to see. So I would say, downloading high-res files offline like that may just be something you see, but I have no specific knowledge about it. I hope that gives you some insight into it, though. Okay, where was I? Let's take a look. Holy moly! Well, that is a delightful font. The space after it is definitely really noticeable. Or is it? Well, now I'm curious what other fonts we have. I wish... Oh, Lucida? Ooh, I do like some Lucida. I wish this sorted them by monospace and not, but... Oh, there's the undefined. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, that seems a little bit healthier right there. I'm still wondering if that space is causing it to shove over, though. I'm going to go ahead and pull that space out. I think it's too big for our purposes here. So I just tucked a space into the string.format right there. I think we can verify that that's the problem. Just launch that back out. Yep, we're back in the corner there. Well, that's okay. So this is why I didn't actually delete those. I thought we might be back here. And I think we'd go ahead and say local text border equals 2. And then, what is it? And it's really more of a margin. Margin equals 1. So we can go ahead and say, oops, text margin times 2, text margin times 2, and then text margin, text margin. Now, if I were really overcomplicating it, I could have a different margin variable for left and top. I think that's a little overkill for this purpose. But I gotta say, a 1 margin is not giving me what I want, possibly because of the scaling that's going on. So if we could have a 2 margin, what's going on with that? Oops. Oh, that's much better. Let's make sure it's not weird when it comes to the decimal numbers. Oh, Lucida, you're disappointing me. Baz says Lucida fits much better here. It does. Unfortunately, it's wiggling in a way that I wouldn't have thought if it was a true monospace. That's okay. Baz says, I wish I could add my own fonts without a hassle. Yeah, I'm guessing with the use of opacity, you could have text as an image, but that's not really useful unless you had multiple versions of the image. Like you were doing your own true type kind of system. It would not be pleasant, and it wouldn't really be scalable to a lot of text. Without a hassle, exactly. So yeah, adding images and supporting different sizes and all that, it just isn't. It isn't very sustainable. Like you could do it for a thing. Well, I think we'll go ahead and use the seated console 12, even with the decimal point wiggling that we saw, because I do think it fits very much nicer here. Yeah, look at those numbers shifting about. That is not monospaced. I mean, it should be, but it's not. All right. If it's either fixed just that. Oh, what about font size? Oh, it says 15. I'm so used to other UI systems where the font is separate from the font size, and here it's just you specify the font and the size at the same time, which just makes me a little sad. Because I would very much like to have fixsys 12. Now, I could go out on a limb and try it, but I'm sure that would not work. Yep, that is giving me. Now that's giving me the same look and feel. I wonder if I have mistyped the Lucida one in some way. Oops. Fiddler says, it is monospace, it's just that the right justify feature isn't working right. Worked okay for that one. Let's go ahead and do top left, just to get a sense of what's going on. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and have one of each of these, so I can go back and forth a little bit more easily. Okay, so this is what it looks like in the top left. And I should probably just turn the decimal on all the time while I'm doing this little testing. Save myself a precious 10 seconds. Well, Tharler, you're right about that. It definitely doesn't wiggle around nearly so much. Best as you can scale it if you want a certain font. Let's just go with a bottom left here. See, this is why UI work always takes a little bit longer than I would like it to, because it's just so much playing around and like, what looks better? What is better? What is good in life? Hey, Hunter, what do you think about that? I think that's good. I haven't heard any dissent. It is doing it again.
I wish it was in the light area, but once it goes to double digits, it doesn't work right.
Thor agrees. It's fine. We're going to move on. It's certainly better than it was, which was not having anything. So awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and delete some of those little bits there. Okay, so we wanted to show a whole number of seconds remaining as text on the icon. And that seems to be a thing that exists now. In fact, we've gone beyond that. Not only is a whole number of seconds, but when you get below 5 seconds, suddenly you get into decimal precision mode, which I think is pretty cool. It certainly gives you a little bit better sense of just how many fractions of a second you have left. Bam. Love it. Okay, so let's go ahead and call that good. Now, we have a couple of things to do here. We have a README file where we should start keeping track of what we're doing here. All right, so show numeric, let's see, so we added a numeric cooldown to show number of seconds remaining as text on icon. Perfect. And we can go ahead, delete it from the to-do file, and we could save that as a snapshot. But that reminds me, we're still working as if this was a 1.0.0. Remember, after we've done a release, as we did last time, we should come in here, we should increment the .plugin file. So now it's 101. And anything else? Well, we added to the README file. We'll see that as an update when we come refresh the plugins here. Now it's 101. Awesome. So let's go ahead and capture some of that. We'll go ahead and increment version number. And we can go ahead and capture the new feature that we've added. In fact, I'm just going to copy this and use it as a bit of a long commit message. Okay, so in the Decoy window, we can review the changes we've made here. We went ahead and added a couple local variables. That'll help us later on. Maybe that'll always be the same. But it certainly let us extract out that for now. So we'll see. What else do we have? In the function where we update, we also update the text that we're going to set onto that label. So everything looks good here. And finally, we have removed an entry from the to-do file. Sweet. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot. And we can even remember to push that out to the other server where it'll be nice and backed up. Perfect. Okay. Well, that was really cool. Now, one of the things I want to look at is, oh, that's funny. Apparently, I forgot to turn off the wants mouse feature of that label. So if you click on the label itself, which is on top of the image, it's getting the mouse input. So let's go ahead and fix that real fast. Now we could have seen it by looking at any of these other controls, maybe. Oh, we extracted that out, of course. So let's go ahead and get this timer text. Self.timerText set mouse visible is visible. Yeah? That seems suspiciously wrong. Maybe I was in a hurry last time. All right. Excellent. Yeah. And in fact, this is wrong as well now. I was thinking at the time that I would want to set the mouse visible for everything, but I think that turned out to not be the case. All right. Self getting it was sufficient. We didn't have to turn on the mouse for all the controls underneath it. The containing window was sufficient. And so let's go ahead and take a minute to clean that up, actually. Those places where we were calling this, yeah, they can just call that instead. We don't even need that function anymore. Let's see, set all mouse visible, and gone. Code that is not present is code that can't break. Cool, okay, so this here, we can see that I still have camera control, but as soon as I'm on top of this, I don't. And when it's out for realsy, I can click right through it. Perfect. Okay, so slide that out of the way here. Let's go ahead and make a commit here. Remove incorrect mouse visible code. Made label mouse invisible. Cool. All right, we can take a snapshot of that as well. Zero zero looks like it's got surprised eyes. That is a thing. Now, I like seeing this in the kind of, this is what it will look like when it first comes out. And I suppose that's a good question. We should probably go ahead and self.timer text, set text to 15. Now, one thing that I have noted is this is not compatible with the plugin actually working because you have a decoy out. And so this doesn't behave well if you already have a decoy out and you want to unlock it for moving around. That's a problem for a future day, though. Right now, we view it and it's 15. The other thing would be maybe nothing, 0, right? But I think I like seeing that because we can imagine maybe having an option to change the border color or the font color and wanting to see a preview of that in situ. So I think leaving that visible is the right move, just in case we go down that road. Okay, well, let's go ahead and capture that. Set countdown to 15 when unlocking window. Cool. So we know what we did and we know why we did it. So another benefit of source control is tying a specific set of changes to why you made the changes, which is something that just gets lost if you aren't using source control. You make a change, you save it, and you're done, and in a month you look at it and say, why did I do that? Now, I have worked with coworkers whose commit messages were less than ideal, where their commit message might be, I did a thing, or why not, or lol, and they're not using source control to its full potential. We'll put it that way. Okay, awesome. We fixed a couple of cool little bugs here, or not so great. So one of the things that I was interested in looking into is we have a system here where the thing drawn is being stretched. And to look what it looks like without that stretching, we can come in here to the window and we can look at where we do set stretch mode and we scale up the width and the height and we set the size. What if we don't do that? What if we come back in This is the normal size, and it's that size because the icon is that size. If we go ahead and drag this down here, oh, actually, that's funny. Oh, because I've changed the size of that bar. Let's come on in here to Decoy. Is that the normal size? Yeah, look at that. So that's the normal 32 by 32 pixel icon right there. So anytime you have a bigger icon than that, we're using that stretching mechanism. Stop that. We're using that stretching mechanism where we set the stretch mode, and then we rescale the size, and it seems to do a lovely job of just stretching everything very nicely. So one of those things, if we were to go ahead and double it up even more, we'll start to see some massive pixelation going because it's not getting more information about those pixels. Whoopsie. Why is the width? Oh, the doubling's already implied. Excellent. So we can see we're not getting more pixels. We're just it's just stretching and interpolating for us, which is delightful. Let's make it even bigger. This is a fun thing to do to a hunter friend. Bam! This is the only thing that matters. Yeah, so one of the things we notice is this bar is also being scaled up dramatically. It really only has those 32 positions, even though we have more precision than that. So what I was really interested in is instead of setting the stretch on ourselves, what if we just set the stretch on the image and scaled ourselves up more manually? And so what I would like to try is that. So stretch the image, make the rest bigger manually. Now, where is that going to get us into trouble? Well, we have whoops, I scrolled too far, sorry. In our update function, which is here, we have a lot of hard-coded 32s. And that's going to come back and bite us. But one thing at a time. And that's why we do have source control, because in 10 minutes, when I am frustrated and pounding my head against the table saying, why doesn't this work? Let's just throw up our hands and start over. I can wipe all that out with a single command and just reset back to where we are right now. So it's delightful. Use source control. Your life will be better for it. You'll have whiter teeth. All that jazz. Okay. And a stretch code. I really just want to do all my work right here. So we know that this is working code, and we're going to try and replicate that. So it says holding control plus Z works too until it doesn't. I have used that method from time to time, but it's a little imprecise. Okay, so we know image control is really what we want to try setting the stretch mode on. Now, that does raise the question, what can we call set stretch mode on? Let's go back to the documentation here a minute. What if it turns out it's only a window? Well, I don't actually see it on here. Let's see, set stretch mode. I don't see it there. Is it undocumented? It might be undocumented. Let's go back to control. Control is the source of all good things. Okay, I'm not saying a stretch mode here either. This could be one of those undocumented things that we just know about. Excellent. We can see in red, because it is undocumented, get stretch mode and set stretch mode. But we do see it on control. So I have high hopes that this might possibly work maybe. That's about the best I'm going to get. Set stretch mode. And we're going to go ahead and set it to 1. It'd be nice if there was enumeration for that, but it's okay. And then let's go ahead. Actually, I do want that logic right here. And then we're going to set ourselves that size, and yes. Okay, self.image control, set size, and we're just going to use that scaled width twice, because the scaled height is taking into account the health bar and the timer bar and in a way that we don't want to right now. All right, let's see how bad this is. Neat. Okay, what has almost certainly happened is this is on top of the other stuff because they haven't resized. Thurler says, I think you should save stretch percentage rather than width. Maybe. My thought process is basically a slider bar that goes from a sensible minimum to a sensible maximum. But absolutely, that can be translated to pixels internally, but would make a certain sense to account for multiple screen resolutions to be a percentage. So from like 0.05% of the screen width to 0.2% of the screen width or something along those lines. No, I should not have mixed my decimals with percentage. 0.05 to 0.2 of the screen width, for example. But I haven't really settled on that. Certainly the rest of it, the locations, let's see. Yeah, that width is a scaled percentage. And so if we go look at the settings, where did I put those? Did I put them in a file called options? Globals, cool. We can see that the left top and top are being saved. Oh, okay. The saved width is actually being saved as a percentage. Currently, on my system, that produces about 32 pixels. But we'll note that most everything isn't paying attention to that yet. That was just, let's throw it into the default settings, and we'll come back to that. Right now, only left and top are being actively used. Okay, so what went wrong here? Well, what went wrong is that everything is being set to a specific location within its parent, and it was only the scaling that moved things around. And so if we want to do this, we're going to need to know how big that image is ahead of time so that we can move everything down. And that's doable. Forgot to turn off my alarm. That's definitely doable. Let's see. Settings at windows at width times screen width. Where do we get that? Oh, we get that really high up. Okay. And the scaled height, we don't, let's see. We want that for the window height, you know? Okay, well, that looks like we could pull those up here. And now we're using that saved scaled percentage of the window width times the screen width to get how wide we're going to be. Oh. Yes, there are. It is currently a percentage of the screen width. Settings that windows at width is based on how what percentage of the screen do you want the icon to take up. You think it'd be natural for scale equals 1 to be unscaled? My thought on that was the 32 by 32 icon is practically the smallest I could see being useful for a hunter. I mean, I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but having something this size on the screen, maybe it's a little small for my taste, but to go even smaller than that just doesn't feel. I mean, at a certain point, you just have a little tiny thing, and it would be hard to read or use. So my thought was, it's always going to be this or bigger, and so setting as a percentage of that is fine. But then we're anchoring this on a per pixel thing, and everything else is scaled to the screen. So if you go to a screen resolution that's twice the size, the relative left and top stay the same, and so the icon shows up in the same place, but it would be, half half the width and half the height if you're scaling against unscaled instead of against the screen resolution. I could see an argument for it either way. But if the position on the screen is scaled for the screen resolution and the size of it is scaled on pixels, that feels like it would be kind of a mixed message. So I don't know. I could see it. Actually, for the D-Tracker plugin, all of my saved values are just pixels. And if you change resolutions and the window happens to be off the screen, then we slide it back on. Other than that, it's just like, hey, your window was 400 over and 600 down. And if you move to a bigger resolution, then the window is just going to be where it is. Because that was just way easier. I didn't have to deal with decimal values in a save file, which is, as you know, a bit of a headache. So that was my general thought is, yeah, if you go to a resolution twice as wide, twice as big, the relative size of that plugin should be the same, right? Like it should take up the same amount of the screen. Or if you don't like that, you can always come into options and scale it down. But because I feel like the community seems to not like that if you go up to like a 4K monitor, a lot of the UI elements don't scale up in a way that feels proportional. And so trying to set up a proportionality system makes sense to me. Just kind of future-proof it. But that being said, a lot of people don't change resolution, so it's kind of moot. Like we're going to get a value, and for 99% of the time, it's going to be the same. Okay, so that is a fun divergence into a design decision of how do you store this information. And yeah, for a plugin, are we storing it per pixel information or proportional information? So things are already stored proportionally to the screen resolution. We're going to run with it right now. But if you're doing your own plugin, that's a question you have to ask is position, size, all these things. How do you want it to change if someone changes their screen resolution? Thurlore says, that's one point of view. For me personally, I always want it scaled in integer multiples, so 1x, 2x, 3x, etc., regardless of screen size. That's a perfectly fine way to do it. Yeah, in fact, you could even see, like, instead of a true scroll bar, you could have, a scroll bar with fixed ticks, where, or even just like a spinner box, where it's how many times, 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x. There are so many different ways to do that kind of an interface. Okay, so let's move forward with a perhaps imperfect solution. And take a look at what we've got. So we know the scaled width and scaled height. Those are not fantastic names, though. Thurlore says, the way the game UI works is it saves the position and size of the UI elements as percentages of screen size, so everything maintains the same relative position and size regardless of resolution. Sweet, so we'll kind of mimic that. All right, so scaled width and scaled height kind of made sense within the context of stretching the image, but I'm afraid they're not going to make sense within larger context of here. Thurlore points out, it does have a rounding error in the load/slave, so your UI elements can creep. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Let's go ahead and do a rename here, where scaled width is instead called window width. And scaled height is instead called window height. Okay, so, and in fact, this times 1.2 is a little suspect because we only know it's that because of the, we knew the height of the two elements, and like we figured that out based on pixels. I'm wondering if that's going to be a problem later on. Yeah, it's okay. So, we have a self-set size, 40 and 48? Really? Is this pixel, or this image possibly not 32? Why do I keep thinking it's 32? I'm going to do a little snip here. Whoops. Let me get a slightly larger one. And just get a quick and dirty pixel count here. MS Paint, it may be many things, but it is able to tell you the size of something. if you're willing to put up with all of its foibles. Okay, great. That is 32 by 32. I do have the 2 bars below, but why is it 40 wide? Well, let's fix that. Guy says MS Paint is the most versatile tool ever. You can use it for almost everything. I use it for really simple image stuff. I have overused it for many things. More complicated stuff, I'll use the GNU image manipulation program or GIMP, but really simple pixel level stuff, MS Paint is fine. All right, so set position. We are already doing great there. Image width. That is actually fixed. We know that's the width of the image. Fixed. Decoy and deadly decoy will be 32 by 32 until the future. Now, in theory, someday there could be a graphics revamp where the icons are higher image. Chances are there could be a different ID for the higher one. So if you had a 64 by 64, 128 by 128, excuse me, chances are they might use a different ID for accessing those, so the same ID would still be accessing the old 32 by 32. But that's sort of a future problem. If it breaks plugins to have higher resolution icons, so be it, right? Like, we'll fix them. And then the text margin. You know what? We'll just, we'll come back to that. It's entirely possible that we'll want to parent the text inside of the image instead. I wonder if this is even going to work at this point. Let's find out. Okay, by parenting the text inside the image, when the image gets scaled, the text is getting scaled too. Awesome, we can forget about it, it's done. Okay, so we know that the timer control, we want it to be X width. Now it's currently 32 width. Why is it 32? Why did I make 40? No wonder I was getting weird stuff with the text earlier. Yeah, Thurler points out, otherwise you'd have to change the font as we scale up. I don't want to mess with that. We already have a perfectly fine scaling system here. So by parenting this way, when we resize one control, it's going to, seems to, stretch anything underneath it. Perfect. All right, let's come on in to the timer control. All right, and boom, okay. So, timer control, we want to be lower than the scaled size of the image. Now the image, we know, is going to be as wide as the window and is and the same height because it's been scaled up from 32 by 32. Let's see. So we know we want the timer control to be as wide as the window, not 32. And we want the top of it, instead of being 36 down, which was 4 pixels beyond, we can think of it in terms of scaling. Now, if we go window width divided by 32 times 4, so if we scale that 4 pixel margin plus window width, we might get something a little bit more reasonable. Sweet, kind of. Now we haven't scaled the height of it either. Everything needs scaling, all of it. So let's give ourselves some local variables. So width equals the width? No, the width hasn't changed. Local timer control top equals, let's go ahead and reorder that. So we have the height of the image and that. Now, we could be nicer to ourselves and have timer control, oops, excellent. Timer control top margin. If we go ahead and just separate that out, and we know the margin is 4 pixels scaled up. And then the top equals, and this is where naming things is nicer. So if we go ahead and that image control, we already had an image width, and we have, let's see, window width and window height. What we want, local final image width equals, and local final image height equals. And now we can use these that variable to maybe make a little bit more sense. So the top of the timer control should be the height of the image in its final state plus this margin right here. And maybe that makes a little bit more sense. And in fact, we can actually do another variable. I love splitting things out into named variables. Timer control top margin pixels equals 4. And again, this 32, that's going to bite us. Let's go ahead and, so. And Thurlor is correct. I do mean, did I? You know, it's more confusing, but the window height is different. Like, it's scaling differently. But you're correct. The final image height is going to be better for this. So, final image height plus that margin. And the margin is that proportionality. In fact, we're going to use this a fair amount, I would imagine. Let's get... You know, the funny thing is that's probably just the scaling factor. Are we reverse engineering something? Maybe not. Okay. Local image scaling equals final image width divided by image width. Awesome. We're gonna just call that its own little name there. So in final, we have the pixels that we want to scale up 4. And we're going to want to do something similar with the size of this thing, because that's 5 pixels, and we're going to want to do something very similar. So local timer control height in pixels equals 5, and that 5 was arbitrary, it just looked fine. Thurlor says, anytime you see widths and heights in the same expression is probably an error. Absolutely. Naming things like this is going to help us with code smells, things that are a little suspicious. They've maybe gone off a little bit. All right, timer control height in is going to be that image scaling times timer control height pixels. Awesome. So we have that. We have setting the top of this. Again, we're just going to go ahead and substitute in that new variable, which is going to use the final image height plus the top margin. Top margin is going to be the image scaling factor times the top number of pixels. And we have kind of helped out with all of our magic numbers there. All right. Let's go ahead and see how we wreaked chaos upon this. No. In fact, I would say that looks a little bit better, other than the fact that the It is now 32 pixels out of a bunch of pixels. So let's come back in here. We have 32. 32 is not right anymore. Timer control, when we set that size, it was window width. We can go ahead and substitute that in right here. And now we have a bar width that is proportional to the size of the window. Sweet. Let's give that a shot. Nope. What have I done wrong? I'll tell you what. Let's find the number 32 anywhere. Aha. So setting width, what we really want is to set it back to full. Thurler says, luckily the API accepts non-integer values for positions and sizes. Not sure what it does with them though, truncate versus round. That's absolutely true. I've found the interface for all of its foibles to be surprisingly flexible and forgiving. If you pass it values it doesn't understand, generally it'll just pretend like it was a 0, or if you get a decimal and it wants an integer, it'll just do something with it. But when we're talking pixels, truncating versus rounding, we're talking about a difference of 1 pixel on a screen with millions of them, or at least 1,000 in the width direction. And so being off by a pixel for a plugin, that's a fine compromise for just being able to throw a number at a function and it just works, right? So I have found the API to be a very comfortable way to kind of get used to how to deal with Lua in Lotro. Baz says, were you literally counting pixels a few minutes ago? Yes. I was curious what the original size of that image was, but the point is, if I was scaling this up to 35 1/3 pixels, Lotro would just do it, right? It would be like, all right, okay. Seems like a silly thing, but sure. Oh, we're gonna have a person in the background here. Watch out. All right, so let's check out, oops, I've scrolled on down here. So when this unlock from moving, it was just setting to a fixed number of pixels, but that has scaled up. Now we know that's 32 pixels instead of whatever size that is right now. Same thing with the health control. It's being set to a permanent value. So a thing we can do just to kind of cheat here is up here at the timer control, we can go ahead and set self.timercontrol dot max width equals window width. And in fact, we could go ahead and use that instead of window width here if we wanted to. It's fine either way. Or instead of that, we could go ahead and set it equal to get width, the next line. But either way, we can go ahead and set a max width, and we can do the same thing for the health control. We haven't actually even gotten to it, but we can go ahead and do self.healthcontrol.maxWidth equals window width. And down in the function here, we can go ahead and use that, self.timercontrol.maxWidth and self.healthcontrol.maxWidth. And then that could just be the solution that we want here. If we unlock, we can see now the health bar is the full number of pixels. The real question is, what does it do if we deploy it? Oh, look at that. Look how much more precision we have as it's making full use of probably around 100 pixels. Oh, that's delightful. You know what? I want to detour. I can't detour. I'm going to write it down in the to-do file because it's a fun thing. Change color of bar to red when less than 5 seconds. I want to pull that straight from the Minstrel Buffs plugin, which also does a very similar thing. Okay, let's come back in here. We've got to finish up one thing before we get started on the next. Otherwise, source control commits get terabad. All right, okay, so coming back up here, what do we see? We don't see the health bar. We haven't done that one yet. Now it's going to be very similar here. So let's make that a little bit taller. Maybe we can see both of them at the same time. In fact, let's go ahead and just minimize that. Okay, health control. So we have a setting a size. We can go ahead and sub in the window width there, but we have a fixed value of the top. Oh my goodness. Let's see if we can reconstruct that. That was 32 plus 4 plus the height of that was 5 and plus something equals 42. All right, so that's 10. Okay, plus 1. So we know we can substitute in the scaled height of the image and the scaled top margin and the scaled height and a scaled separator, and we'll get the actual value we want. Cool, let's do that. So local, we can just follow the convention. So this is health control, top margin pixels is apparently 1. You know, this would have been good to, oh wait, we save off our screenshots. So if we come into Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, Cube plugins, it's me, Hunter, a website, we've got what this looks like. Let's pull that up. Does that look like 1 pixel? Well, it kind of looks like 1 pixel scaled up, especially if this is meant to be 4 pixels and this has a height of 5. Yeah, I could definitely buy that as 1 pixel. Great. I've convinced myself that this is not wrong. And that's why, yeah, saving off those elements that you put out there, images or textual descriptions for websites or Lotro interface, it can be handy. I could have looked that up even if my internet was offline, if I had my laptop, I was on the train, whatever. Okay, so we have the pixels. So we want a local health control top margin equals the image scaling that we helpfully saved off times that in pixels. And then we can do local health control top equals final image height plus timer control top margin plus, and this is going to run off the right. So let's just go ahead and give us some, we'll do it vertically just like it's coming in. All right, so we have image height, we have the top control margin, we have the height in pixels, plus we want the margin here, and that's our top. So image, space, timer control, space. Awesome. And we can substitute that in for the number 42, which was just sitting there, a magic number just waiting to trap us. And this is a much lengthier way of writing it out, but it's something where we can look at it and confirm that it is correct and change it more easily. If we want the 2 to be separate now, we can actually just change this to be 2, and there'll be more space between it. Now, in reality, we have a chicken and egg problem because the original height of the health control, timer control, those margins, those paddings, is what we use to determine this 1.2 to 1 ratio of the window size in the first place. So ideally, this would somehow feed back in, like we could calculate it based off of all of these things, but all of these things are being calculated based off of that. So this is not great because if you wanted to have a different sort of layout or add more things, you'd need to kind of come back to that basics, 32 pixels, how tall that is everything, recalculate this scaling ratio. However, because we're giving names to all these magic numbers, I think that'll be much easier to do. Okay, so we have one more magic number left, the size of it. We've already seen this. In fact, it's going to be identical to the code here, but one could imagine we could want to have separate heights for the 2 bars sometime. So we'll just go ahead and do another local health control height pixels equals 5, and local health control height equals image scaling times health control height pixels. And again, this is probably going to be a fractional number, and we're just throwing that into set size, and Lotro is doing something with it, and that's great. It's very handy. All right, let's go ahead and toss that in, and now we're not using magic numbers in our function calls, and this might actually work. Let's give it a try. Now we can unlock the window to see, okay, they're on top of each other. We haven't accounted for something properly, but we can just see it. So if I was just to go ahead and throw in like a, I don't know, 5 here, I shouldn't, but just for testing purposes. Let's get that thing out from under there. Okay, now we're off the bottom of the window. Interesting. What's going on there? Okay, what we might be seeing is that the window itself might not be tall enough. And so the bottom might be getting cut off. So let's do 2 things. Let's go ahead and the timer control, let's deparent it. So it might not be on top of it anymore in case it's too high up. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that in all of our stretching flexible code, we may have just overshot the bottom of the window. That happens. In fact, that's exactly the problem I was talking about with this chicken and egg circular problem of ideally the height of the window would be based on all of these things. And in fact, maybe we can. Where do we use the window height after all? We set size down here, but we've already done that. Maybe the window height can be calculated, in which case that would be delightful. We don't even need that. Oh my goodness, that would be cool. Let's go ahead and set the width of this thing to window width. And let's come back here to window height, and maybe, we saving that off as a value? No, we're not. Okay. Let's come on down here, and instead of that, we would want the top of the health control plus the height of the health control. Okay. It would help if I then used it to do anything. So let's go ahead and set height. And then I will not look confusingly at the thing. Let's give that a try. Okay, well, it's not quite what I was hoping for. So we have a set width there. Self set height. Let's just go ahead and make sure we're not overwriting ourselves. What is this? Well, let's go ahead and print out some stuff here. Do we have the debug function? Let's see. Utils. We don't. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a turbine.shell.writeLine. Let's just do, let's do all of these. Just a little sanity check on what we're seeing here. Okay, so we got a top is 118 pixels down. We got the height is 5 pixels, which does that seem right? It does not seem right. Okay, could you do all the stretching you're doing right now with set stretch mode? Excellent question, Sour. We were doing that originally, actually. Let me pull that up. What we were doing originally, well, that's a bigger window than I meant it to be. What we're doing originally was exactly that, laying this all out and then stretching it out. But what that meant was this bar was 32 pixels wide, and this the time bar was 32 wide, and the health bar was 32 wide, which meant the resolution of those ticking bars was 1/32 of whatever we were doing, which is fine. For the time purposes, it was fine. So our 15 seconds meant that every half a second we would get a tick on the bar. And for the health, well, what is the health? I know that's in my globals here. So the health at level 50 is 2670. So that 2670 was being divided into 32 chunks, so every 83 damage we could lose a tick. But what I was interested in is having the image stretch, because that's all the pixels we're going to have. But these bars can be as wide as we want them. If we have 200 pixels, why don't we get 200 pixels worth of resolution on the time and the health? And so that's what I'm playing around with is, yes, using the game to stretch the image, but then going ahead and stretching the bars ourselves. Totally optional. It worked fine. The version 1 works fine with only 32 pixels. And the reality is that's just me being greedy, because I know these numbers get ridiculous when you get to level 130. Level 130 Decoy has 100 and almost 10,000. And so at that point, it's 3,400 health per pixel. If you only have the 32 pixels to play with, which is fine. Like if you're fighting a level 130 thing, it's probably going to do more than that per hit. But if you're doing, scaling down an instance, you're helping out a friend, you're doing a level 100 instance, and you pop that thing out, that actually raises a question for me. What level do you get when scaled for epic battles? Is it 100? Does the decoy match? I couldn't test that on this server because we don't have epic battles on Treebeard. Yeah, you're helping out a friend, you're doing a level 122, and you pop this out, and suddenly things are only doing a few thousand morale, or you're running, the Rift or something. It'd be nice to be able to see anything happening as a verification that yes, this is still registering the damage, because I think that actually threw me for a long time, because I was using decoys in a position where they were taking so little damage that they would last the full 60 seconds, and I got the impression that decoys didn't have a morale bar; that they just sat out there and they never died, because at level 6, when you first get it, it's really not taking very much damage, especially in the intro. But you start getting out into like level 50 stuff, and yeah, it's starting to get chewed through. And so, it was just about getting that much resolution as you could from the pixels that you were already going to be using. And as I wonder if I can do that moment, right? Like a lot of what I do in plugins is, I wonder if that's possible, and then it just snowballs from there, right? Okay, let's go ahead and figure out what I did wrong. So, you know what? I've lost track of where I was, but that's totally cool. Thank you for the awesome question. You say normal pets are level 100, so decoy should be as well. The real question is, we can't interface with the decoy as a pet, because it's not a pet. It's a weird other thing. And so we can't directly get the health of the decoy like you could with a local player, get pet, get health kind of thing. Instead, I just went over onto Bullroar and looked at the health for each level of Hunter. And so we used the current level of the Hunter to know how much health the decoy comes out with. And so that's my question is, if you're scaled for an epic battle, does the get level call for the what is it? Turbine gameplay local player. Does this get level? Does that get the does it return 100 or does it return your actual level? Because that's how we're determining the health of the decoy. So I would hope it would return 100 because you are kind of level 100 there, but I could see it also returning your true level. So that's a thing to look into. Okay, let's check this out. So we saw the top was 118 pixels, the height was 15, and so the window height should be 134. That's cool. What else is going on? Did I forget to or reparent the timer control? Let's see. Oh, timer control is still there. Oh, hello, waiter. Oh, Christy, you are a Dutch streamer, are you not? I was just glancing at your page the other day. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Plugging Along stream. We are a stream about making Lotro plugins. And so today we're working on the Hunter Deadly Decoy plugin. And so if plugin development is interesting to you, I hope you stick around, possibly find the mistakes that I'm making, which is currently making this plugin not work. And otherwise, welcome. It is currently 10:40 here in the evening here in the Netherlands. So I will only be streaming for another 20 minutes or so. Just Evdo says, what is your own channel? Well, my Twitch account is B4142135662. As you may see somewhere. I don't know. Streamer. There we go. That being said, I don't actually post a lot there. Most of my stuff just comes here directly to the official Lotro Twitch channel. But feel free to give a follow there if you want. Someday I will have the time to post both there and here. Yes, Dutch! I am actually an immigrant from the US, but someday, when this pandemic lifts, I'll go back to Dutch classes, Dutch language classes, and maybe get a little bit more integrated into the Netherlands. Okay, so where were we? We were looking at this window and trying to figure out why not all of it is showing up. Probably because the window is not tall enough. Now, a simple thing we can do is just say, you know what, this window, oh, that's funny. Setting, as Thurler mentioned before, if you are setting the height of something with a variable called width, you're probably doing it wrong. Oh, was that the problem this whole time? Thurler, you're supposed to catch those. Oh, I kid. Evdo says, I have great English. Well, thank you. I am actually a native English speaker. I moved from America to the Netherlands a while back, and then a pandemic hit, so it's made picking up Dutch harder. It's a work in progress. Okay. Where was I? I was just about to see, was that a foolish mistake that was causing me problems? Look at that. Awesome. Okay. So things are a work in progress. The health bar seems to be in the wrong location, so we can work on that. But the timer bar is great, and we can see the clock is ticking down, and the decoy exploded. Okay, so let's take a look. We can use our unlock to pull that back up, and we can see the first problem is the health bar is too far up. So let's take a look at what we're doing there. The health control top is what we're using. So we know the final image height. Oh, there's a problem. We're using up pixels, and we should just be using the scaled version. So that is almost certainly going to be causing. There we go. And now the final thing is we're still getting just a hard-coded 32 pixels wide, and we really want that health bar to take up all of the space. So let's go take a look at what's going on with that width. Now, that's the self.health control here. So what we're really looking for is a set. I would take a size. I would also take a width. Now, we do have the width here, but here we go. We can see that in the show, we have a hard-coded value. We don't want a hard-coded value. We want to go ahead and set that to max width. Now, is that the problem? Well, let's find out. Awesome. That could very well be the problem. Now, let's go ahead and do some damage. We know this has, whoops, that is too much. We know that this decoy has about 2,600 health. And so 500 is going to be about a fifth of that. Oh, interesting. Thank you for checking. I'm gonna keep mispronouncing that. So Uruko, let's go take a look at our table of health. So you are getting a decoy that is level 100, the 19350, but you are saying get level is giving you 130, which is frustrating because that means this will not work in an epic battle correctly. It'll think it has way more health. Instead of the 19,000, it'll think it has 109,000. So that's certainly a question. Now, maybe a local player has some other way of interacting with a level, but it doesn't look like it. So I don't have a good answer for that yet, but I'm definitely going to go ahead and copy that note into my file for later. So thank you for checking into that. I appreciate that. Baz says you could try to detect the scaling effect on the player as a workaround. Absolutely, it's quite possible. I'm confident I've seen messages in chat about scaling your level. So that's just a chat monitor looking in the right channel, looking for text that matches X, and okay, now we can use that as our assumed level, and we just have to remember to set that back using the corresponding message that says your level has been returned. So I think it's possible to do, in fact. What chat messages are used to start and end level scaling? Cool. Yeah, we could totally do that. I mean, it seems like no matter what plugin you're working on, if it gets complicated enough, eventually you start to have to monitor chat for something, right? Like, there's all sorts of things that are just helpful. Schedule's not spelled with a 3, silly. Oh, that's a good point. Baz notes that there might be an effect applied to a player that we could look for as well. Absolutely. You know what? These are great ideas. I'm just going to steal them. Whoops. That wasn't the copy button. Sweet. I'm just going to take all your good ideas. They're mine now. Okay. In the meantime, health control, it doesn't look like it's getting correct. So decoy damage is probably the culprit. Look at that. Look at that. We really want self.healthcontrol.maxWidth. And I think at that point, if we go ahead and summon out the decoy, awesome. We can see the timer sticking down nicely. If we then go ahead and do some 500 point damage, oh, that is proportionally beautiful. And nice. Only a rank 9,999? Oh. Oh, man, chat's happened. I missed it. Level scaling you to level 100, scaling down your equipment, scaling your virtues down to at most rank 999. Awesome. Do you have the message for when that ended? Did it end? You haven't left yet. No hurries. I'm going to be here for a few more minutes. Okay, awesome. So I'm super excited. We've got the scaling, and we can see the bars have lost their anti-aliased hewing that's going on here. Oh, you've got the message. Awesome. Let me pull this up so we can all admire. You can see the sort of a fuzz that's happening as those 5 pixels are being scaled up to, I don't know, 12 or 13. Now the scaling algorithm is actually, I think, doing a pretty reasonable job. The color is falling prey to a common issue, but it's fine. It's great. Okay, removing level scaling. Awesome. Gonna steal that. Make the slider, you want to see the magic happen. That's fair. But people are giving me messages. Now, of course, that's just the English message. In French and German, it would be different. So yes, here it's all fuzzy, but we can see it's very crisp here because we're using all the pixels. Lovely, love it. All right, so Thurler wants to see a slider. Me too, because oh geez, a slider is going to need to adjust all of these in a similar fashion. That makes me sad. I almost want to have this set up all the items and then call a redraw function that goes through and sets the position and size of each thing. Let's go ahead and make a snapshot because we don't want to redo all that. So let's go ahead and in the to-do file, scaling. Surely the word scale. I don't know where that was. All right, well, we'll go ahead and fixed scaling to only apply to image. Neat. So we'll go ahead and use that as our commit message also. And then in here, all those changes are probably correct. Now, we'll take a second to review. So let's make that a little bit taller. And we can see here, we have we have the width here. We've got lots of variables going in. But really the important thing is what's going on with function calls. And so we can see here, no more magic number, no more magic number. Lovely. 32 has been replaced, 32, 32, 32. We'll call that good enough. There could always be bugs, but we're gonna sail on. Okay, so we had a scroll bar in the opaque quest tracker plugin. I'm gonna sneak over there and take a look at that. So let's take a look and see what it takes to make a scroll bar in our options window. So first of all, where are we? Options, draw options control. Now remember, this isn't a mandatory function name, it's just a handy dandy function name. So we're gonna go ahead and make something underneath the checkbox. So we're gonna say it's a scroll bar to adjust image scaling. Awesome. Local scaling scroll bar. Now this is a turbine.ui.up. We also should have a label, shouldn't we? Ugh. All right. Label for the scroll bar. Scaling scroll bar. All right, local scaling scroll bar label equals. And this is just a normal turbine.ui.label. And then what do? The first thing we have a UI element. We need to set it to set its parent. In this case, it's just going to be the options window itself, which is a control, but is being hosted by Lotro's plugin manager, which is a top-level control. So this is an exception to the normal rule that we need to parent it into a top-level control. Lotro's going to take care of that. All right, scaling scroll bar label set size 200 sounds like a fine default. I'm not going to mess with that until we need to. Scaling scroll bar label set text. Now, here's a point. We should probably go ahead and take a moment and see what's happening. We're formatting a string called opacity. Let's take a look at that. We don't even have a separate function. All right, let's go find that. Opacity. So it looks like that label is showing the scaling, the opacity as a number. Do we want to do it? Do we want to show a number like 1x to something? I forgot the S. Well, thank you for calling that out. That is embarrassing. That's why I try to never type anything, just copy paste stuff that already is there. So ideally, would we want to do something like ×1? We could do that because if we have 64 pixels, or we're at 64 by 64, that's kind of like a ×2. Thurlor was commenting on that before. but we're saving it as a proportion of the screen width. What's an intuitive way for someone to interact with that? Scroll bar icons are only 10 pixels high. That's true. This is the label for the scroll bar. All right. You know what? We're just going to set that to a flat text right now. I don't know what to put there, and that's okay. So, dot opacity. Let's go take a look. Where is that being used? Okay. And then we can set the position. Same thing as before. We're just setting it 10 pixels from the left because we want it to not bump up against the left margin. All right, 10. And then we want it to be below the checkbox before. We know that that was 10 pixels down, 25 pixels tall. So if we set this to 40 pixels down, it's going to be fine. All right, we can verify that we are good to go. Excellent. So we have a label. In fact, let's go ahead and give it a few more pixels because this is a whole separate operation we're doing. And then we can go ahead and do the scroll bar. Now again, I'm just going to look at a previous time that I did it and it worked, and work from there. We have a Lotro Scroll Bar. And again, first thing we do, parent it. Set parent equals, and it's going to be the options window again. Again, we're just going to do some copying. In fact, I'm going to copy that name. So set the size. 200 sounds great. Let's go ahead and play with that. Orientation, we do want to make this a horizontal scroll bar. So in the turbine.ui.orientation enumeration, we can go ahead and call out horizontal. And then the position. Now this is going to be different. Set position. We know we're 10 over from the left margin, but how far down are we? Well, we know the previous one was 60 down, 25, so that's 85. So if we put ourselves at about 90, we can give that a try. And those are all pixels again, so that's how far down we are. And then the final thing is the value. Now, I'm not ready to actually do that yet. I want to see it on the screen. Let's go ahead and get it on the screen. Great, we have a scroll bar. So we can, in the setup here, we can go ahead and make a callback function for when the value of that scroll bar changes. Now we can see it's called value changed, and we can assign it to an anonymous function that takes the sender and arguments. And in here we can do something cool, like we could go ahead and set the text of that just to be the number. It's fine. So scaling scroll bar, get value. So unload, reload, come back in, and we can see that we're getting a value between 0 and 100 here. Perfect. Now we want to change that. We want to interpret that in some way. So let's see, do we want to, no, I think we're good. So local current value equals scaling scroll bar get value. So we'll have that to work with. But we know we want to have a minimum. So practical minimum is going to be 1 time. So we don't want to go smaller than that, 32 pixels wide. It won't be a good user experience. A practical maximum. That's an excellent question. And again, if we're talking about how far up you can scale the image, I don't think we can make a good reasonable assumption because pixels keep on getting bigger. But as a proportion of the screen, I think we could say, yeah, it shouldn't take up more than 20% of the screen. That's just crazy talk. So if instead we had 1x equals 32 by 32 in 1920 by 1080, that is 32 divided by 1920 equals, and in fact, we don't actually need to do the math. We could actually just feed that in. But we know that's about 2% of the screen. about one. Oh, why do I close these things? So we know that's about 1.6%. And a practical maximum, if this thing was 10 times that, that seems silly, right? 400 pixels out of my 1,000? Let's just call it that. Maybe that makes sense. Equals, you know what? Let's just be generous and say 10 times bigger. About, well, it should be 10 times that, right? Like 16%. Thurlow points out that if the screen size changes, we might want to redraw out, and maybe we could definitely get that fancy. But yeah, 10x is definitely a thing, right? Let's see. Okay, so if we want to equate the values 0 through 100, because we do know the far left is 0, the far right is 100, so it's 101 values that this thing can take on. And we want to map that to, 1 to 10, essentially. Now, we could just divide by 10 and get pretty close. We could say if it's 0, that means 1. Or we could round up, right? Like, if we divide by 10 and round up, maybe. Now, do we have a rounding function? I don't think we do. Thurlow points out, we are overthinking this. That's excellent. So if we come back into the, why are you so small, window? If we come back into the turbine.ui, there is a scroll bar. Now, this is the parent class of the turbine.ui.lotro scroll bar that we're using. And as pointed out, there is a set function. What is it called? Set. Set maximum and set minimum. So we can set the maximum and minimum values of this scroll bar, which will constrain it the way we want to without having to do complicated anything. So if we set a minimum to be 1 and scaling scroll bar set a maximum to be 10, what does that look like in here? Well, that's just funny. Okay, so just doing that by itself isn't sufficient. Makes you wonder what this set large change is about. Oops. All right, set minimum, set maximum, and what are we missing? Set thumb button? No. Now, it might be, well, the minimum, the small value when we do a tick is fine. The large change probably isn't relevant here. What's going on with the size of that bar? Yeah, small change is clicking these buttons. Large change, if there was room, if you click to the left or the right of the thumb, is how big that is. So let's talk about the thumb button. Why is that so big? And maybe we can do something about that. So, scaling scroll bar, get thumb button. If we go ahead and just set the width of that to be, say, 20, does that fix it? Oh, maybe I have to set value. Let's start with that. Nope, that's not good. Attempt to index a null value. My goodness. Well, either I called the wrong function here. Get thumb button. All right, maybe it doesn't have a thumb button at that point. Okay, setting value did not fix the problem of this thing being way too wide. Now let's come back here a second. Let's check our assumptions. What happens if I set 100? Okay, that's cool. So what happens if I set 50? Okay, proportionally it's much bigger, yeah. Okay, so it looks like the default behavior is the thumb button is proportional to what's going on. So it does perhaps raise the question that maybe the bar is just too wide and it's doing weird things. No, that didn't do it. That didn't do it at all. All right, maybe this is just the wrong UI element to use in this case. All right, well that's sad. I was hoping we could just have this scale right, but it looks like it's not used, or it's not going to be very productive here. Now, it would be nice if there was a set. Now, there is a set thumb button, which maybe we could use if we really were dedicated to doing this, right? But as it is, I wonder, though, if setting the size after we do that. Sometimes order matters. Nope, not in this case. All right, so by getting rid of the minimum value of 0, we can at least, as Thurlow is pointing out in chat, just divide by 10 and we'll get a number. Well, divide by 10, round up, and we'll get a number between 1 and 10. I know, I just want things to work the way they work in my head, but not today. That's okay. So we can go ahead and in here, local scaled value equals current value divided by 10, but we do want to do a rounding. Now, does Lua have a rounding? Lua 5.1 round to integer. Maybe. Looks like no. Oh well. So, as we're seeing here, we can use math.floor. Does it math.round not exist? Oh well. Circo says, why do you run around? Because of the values. Well, that's a good question. What if I just did 10? No, EXO, I'm not going to build a brand new custom scroll bar from scratch. Delightful as that may be. So I was hung up on the values 1 through 9, divide by 10. They're going to truncate down to 0. But what if we just ignore that? Those values don't exist. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Perfect. Problem solved. Okay. So the scaled value is going to be 1 to 10. What do we do with that? Well, right now we are, oh, sorry, not even in the right place. In the Hunter Decoy window, we are using that scaling nowhere. Where is it? Must be here. Okay. So we're using this with scaling, and that's a percentage of the window. And Thurlow says, I'd remove the math.floor. Why restricted to integers? That's an interesting point. kind of like the idea of seeing those tick, 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 ticks, though. All right, well, that behaves very nicely since the values are fixed between 10 and 100. I'll buy that. All right. I like that. I like that idea. 2.5 might be the perfect scaling. We're currently doing. What are we currently doing? That's a good question. In the globals, we can see, not that, that it was this, which, again, if we're scaling it based on the screen resolution, was about 100 pixels wide. So at 100 pixels wide, that's what we're seeing on screen at my resolution is 3 1/8 bigger times normal. Right there, or about 100 pixels. And of course, if my resolution was doubled, we'd want that to be 200 to be proportionally the same amount of physical space on the screen, if that's a desire. It's my desire, though. So, okay, so this is gives us the information we need. What we have is we're updating the scaling. In fact, we could equal. We can put a little X there for the universal times. And then finally, we know that the screen resolution is something we can get with this. And yes, we're not today going to be reactive to changing of screen resolutions during play, but that is totally something we could be doing. Don't worry, Baz, I will not scale to 2.49. But EXA would be able to do on his machine, or their machine, I should say. Okay, so we have local screen width, screen height equals that. So we have 32 times scaling divided by screen, and this is just pseudocode right here, this is not real stuff, divided by the screen width. In fact, do I even need the height? I don't need the height. Oh, that raises the question, can you get? Well, I guess I could just throw away the value. All right, side tangent. Turbine.ui.display.get. Oh, yeah, you can totally get the width. Cool. Now, if you get a tuple back and you just assign only one value, the other just gets silently dropped. So this is identical result to this. It just does one less thing, hopefully. All right, so 32 times the scaling divided by the screen width equals what we want. So local scale, well, not even local at this point. We want to assign that to settings window width. Settings window width equals, now this is a magic number here. At some point I should pull out these 32s and put them somewhere. A lot of times you'll see a plugin that has like an images file, which is just the paths or the resource numbers of the images and can include a size lookup. We've only got the one image right now, so I'm being a little lazy. But this is a bad idea in general, right? So, pull that out to a central global variable somewhere. It's a good idea. Okay, so we have that equals times the number here, the scaled value. And we can even add some parentheses if we want. It's not important. I think Lua will just execute this left to right. It should do that, but it's nice to be explicit in what we expect. And then we can divide by the screen width. Nice. Now, if we want, we could even go ahead and turbine.shell.write align new width and just write that out, right? just so we get a sense that we are doing the right thing here. So we can see the widths do look sensibly, and if we come up here to 3 point, some we're getting very similar numbers. Come all the way up here, and actually what we're seeing is we went from 0.16 to 0.016 to 0.16. Those are exactly the numbers that we were calling out here, right here. So 1.6%, 16%, that's nice confirmation that we haven't mucked up the math somewhere. Awesome. Now, the one thing we need is, how do we do this? So, surely we have the windows somewhere. Awesome. We're going to call some function, right? What's the function going to be? Now, I already hinted at that before. We need a redraw function that does all of this repositioning logic. Redraw. Change all size and position of each element based on current. What are we looking for? Nope. Current this thing, settings window width, and screen resolution. And what that gives us is if we go ahead and attach to the handler that tells us when the screen resolution changes, we can go ahead and recall this function and relay out the window on the fly there. So we're going to get that for free just by hoisting out all of this logic here. Now, this is going to be a bit painful because what it means is we want to pull out any set width and set height, set position, all of those things, except for self itself. No, we're still going to want that. And I'm a little concerned about what happens to things if we haven't called those functions, but we're going to find out. So let's go ahead and get started. So position, we don't care about. We're only caring about width, height, or size. And we're going to find ourselves with some local controls, maybe. All right, set width. Width and height. Yeah, that's going to be a problem because these are locals. Or is it? Maybe we can move them too. Let's find out. This is where the ability to undo and wind back with source control is going to be really helpful. Okay, so set width and set height. Let's go ahead and separate those with a little bit of space. Image width, text margin, we still need that. Where'd I put that? Let's grab that. Okay, so we have the variables we need here. Window width we don't have. We're going to want that. But the good news is, if we pull, do I even use screen height? I do, good. We're going to go ahead and grab both of those. Thorler says, if you're only saving the window width, which is a percentage of the screen, you'll have to calculate the scaling to initialize the scroll bar. If the screen resolution has changed, the value may be out of range. Absolutely. Populating the default value of this scroll bar is a to-do item, definitely. And that is a thing we'd definitely want to remember to do, is if the screen resolution changes, we'll want to re-change that. So let's actually come in and scaling scroll bar. Populate initial value, oops, based on save file width. Update value if screen resolution changes. Those are both very important. And then screen resolution change. Recall. What do we call that thing? The redraw function. Redraw. Recall is not a very good word here. Call redraw again. Okay, let's see what else we can do here. Okay, so with set position, yeah, that's good. Set parent, size. Now this is a funny one. We want to set the size there, and we want to remember to stretch the image. Whoops. Well, those comments almost seem not very helpful anymore, but that's okay. Window width, awesome. So we still, we're not missing any local variables here. Very good. Okay, so, excuse me. Parent font, position, text alignment, font. All right, parent. All right, this right here is exactly, do we have image scaling? We're gonna want those things. I really should have 2 views into this file so I don't have to keep on scrolling. Can I do that? I know there's a way to, let's see, file, split view. Thank you. Ugh. Can I do a split view vertically? Oh, okay. We'll do it that way. I'm so used to a vertical split view, but it is what it is. Okay, so in the redraw function, over here we've got, where are we? Timer control. Here we want to go ahead and move that out. Let's see, what else do we have? Awesome. Update, all of that seems fine. Health control, set parent, max width. Yeah, we'll pull that out. Where did max width come here? Okay, right by the set size. I like that. Okay, so we know we can pull that out because it's all related to the set size. Great. Same thing here. We can pull all that out. I know watching me refactor stuff is maybe not the most informative, but hopefully it's not the worst. And then finally, local window height. Oh, we still have all those right lines in there. Let's get rid of that. So we can go ahead and move that here. And that should be it. Now, we do need to remember to call this thing redraw. Oops, self redraw. Oh, there's chat. You can take the image from the skill as well. Why do you load it in? Good point. Thurler's already called out the answer. For reasons, although apparently I've broken it here. For reasons, the image here has to be a file. Now, one might ask, why isn't that showing up? One might ask, and I think the answer is I changed the name of the plugin and I forgot to fix that. So it should be Hunter Deadly Decoy. Well, cool. Thanks for reminding me that that's a thing. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so that has to be a file. Already have it. But absolutely, I did find the resource values somewhere, but I lost it. And one of my to-do items is actually to go ahead and detect whether you're doing the deadly decoy or just a normal decoy and change the icon that we use in the pop-up for the few number of levels that you're using it. It's on the to-do list here somewhere. Icon. No. Yeah, use the deadly icon for decoy for that, deadly decoy icon for deadly decoy. So it's there. Okay, so we have a redraw function. Let's see if we get the thing. We don't. Okay. Now that I have a redraw function, I should probably call that instead of question mark. Okay. Okay. We're gonna run into errors here, and that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, Exo says changing names of plugins, and that's why I was hesitant to do it more than once. Results in a fun time tracking down all the references. Absolutely, and obviously I missed one. Oops. So line 101. All right. So we have that. We have that. What's going on here? Final image width is null. Oh, okay. So I pasted that in the wrong location is all. Let's go ahead and move that up to the top. And C. Oh, okay. Well. Oh. Well, that's cool. Now, we haven't... Oh, we did hook that up. Oh, that's cool. Well, hey. Hey, Hunter. That's cool. Exo says, since the icon ID is a number, you could introduce a fun slider to change the icon. Set the values from 1 to a bunch. There's a plugin that I use that the name escapes me, to just browse the okay, plugin. I move them all aside. Oh, nuts. I forget that they're, I'll have to remember who it is. There's a resource browser kind of plugin that just shows them all and lets you scale them up and search for ones of different resolution, and it's beautiful. Recommended if I could remember the name. Let's see, oops. Resource browser. Yeah, asset browser. Thank you, Thurlore, for an asset browser. So, if one were to pull up the plugin compendium, it might even be in there. Nope. Asset browser. So if we go ahead and add that in, thanks, plugin compendium, and refresh here. Asset browser is very handy. Let's pop that up. Oh, let's hide that. Okay, so asset browser. Let's say I'm looking for stuff 32 by 32, height 32 by 32, or you could do with the height ratio of 1. And let's see, it's been a while since I've used this thing. Okay, I have made those the wrong size. I'm trying to adjust them so they're just big enough. Great. So a thing I will do sometimes is just browse through here because I'll be curious. Oh, tiled, excellent. No, tiled, and I know there's a way to set this background to be something not that. Back. Nope. This is what I get for trying to do this on the fly. Normally I just find the setting I like and do it. Thorlor says you can get the asset ID for a skill using the API. That's better than hard coding the ID. Oh, that's a good point. One that I am not familiar with, so I'll have to say that for another time. Anyway, I just really like this because I like zooming through and seeing icons and just, the number of icons there are in this game and the number of subtle variations too is pretty cool. And you'll see some wacky ones too. And of course, there are gaps in the IDs where there doesn't seem to be an image. Cool, yeah. Let's see. It says, are there many players in the game? And yeah, Thurlore has answered the number. Answered with a number. Now, it doesn't depend on what you mean by players. Do you mean how many people are on this server right now? In which case, there's 224 non-anonymous people on Treebeard at this time. If you mean how many people log into Treebeard throughout the day, or how many people log into all of the servers throughout the day, or how many people will pop in at least once a week, once a month, there are as many ways to measure player count as you can think of, really. So I guess the question is, what do you mean by players and in and, well, I know what you mean by game. But the answer is there are hundreds of people on Treebeard right now. It's almost midnight here in Europe, but East Coast is on evening time right now. And there are players on Treebeard from around the world. And across all of the servers, there are thousands of people on at any given time. So, yeah. More than that, there aren't too many official numbers given out. There have been a few numbers posted, which is what people will be referencing. Excellent, Thriller. Well, way to multitask. Awesome. I'll have to look into the API for skills stuff. That sounds really useful. Okay. Where are we? Okay. We are looking at a really cool thing, which is a plugin which will scale up even while it's in use. Oh, that's funny. The timer does get, okay. Let's add that to the do list. Scaling while timer is running messes with the timer. Okay. Makes it a full bar and stops updating. Now, it probably doesn't stop updating, but the numbers it's using are probably off. But if we unlock, we can just look at this in situ. Awesome. So we have the 10 times. This is 320 pixels, and this is the 1 times. Now the real question is, how does? Oops. No. Yeah. How does that look? Oh, interesting. We're getting errors here. Yeah, I bet we are. Okay. What does that look like? Line 38. Oh, yeah. Window width. Window width is no longer being set there. It's a local here. Okay. We could go ahead and have that in both places. That makes sense. Okay, what else do we have that's wrong? Okay, we can do some damage. You know, actually that doesn't look as bad as I thought it would at 32 pixels. Which makes me wonder. Okay, hang on a sec. What if the scroll bar here went below 1 times? Would that work? Like, is there any reason to believe it wouldn't work? I mean, I wouldn't want to go below half. Oh, that's delightfully terrible. Wow. Yeah, no, that has really messed it up. Like those bars. Oh, interesting. They didn't do anything for the first half of the time. The scaling must not be right when it's below 32. Looks fine there. Okay, so that's cool and is very interesting. Let me add that as a to-do. When scaling is less than 1 times, timer bar seems to not update until halfway. Cool. Okay. Well, can we deploy? We can deploy. We can unlock. We can go ahead and launch a new one. Oh, interesting. That should have reset, and it doesn't. Okay. All sorts of ones. Launching a new decoy when dummy decoy is up. It didn't reset timer. All right. Oh, because the window was unlocked. Okay, never mind. Okay, and finally, we already know that rescaling this while the timer is running just is not the running keeps the old scaling. So that's an easy fix. We'll probably do that next time. Oh my goodness, I am so pleased with the progress we've made today. So let's take a snapshot before we break it. So what did we do? We added a scroll bar. Added scroll bar to scale size of plugin window. Awesome. We should probably add that to the to-do file. No, not that window. This one. Sorry, the README file. So we added scroll bar to scale size of plugin window. Great. We'll do that in a separate commit. And stage that there. And oh my goodness, look at all these things. We consolidated into a single redraw function. Beautiful. Okay, and also we fixed path for plugin icon, which means the 100 plugin release is actually broken that way. Fixed path to plugin icon, which is embarrassing. But we'll go ahead and add it to the to-do file, or sorry, the README file. And there we go. Oh, that's so good. I'm really pleased, and thank you all for your ideas, your feedback, your catching of my bugs. This has been fantastic. Oh my goodness, we have a scalable window that almost works. All right, that's like a 2-second fix. Hang on. Okay, so what's going on? When the update, when this fires, we know the start time, we know the current time, the width, the window width is what we need. So, in fact, where is this being used? Just there. Okay, that's actually a super easy fix. Let's go ahead and move that into here. And another question. Interesting. All right, we'll need to fix that when we start dealing with on-the-fly resolution changes. But for now, let's just check that out. Okay, so when we resize, we're setting the value. I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to just let it be whatever it is. Awesome. So on the resize, during redraw, timer text, setting the max width, but setting the width, actually, maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we set the, let's divide that into two. Let's go ahead and set the width to that and set the height, but now the width, let's go ahead and pull that out into timer control right here, but I foolishly hoisted that window width out. My goodness. Oh, no, you know what? We don't need that there. We don't need it at all because it's going to be fixed on the show. We're going to set the timer control, we'll set with, really? 32? What on earth is happening? I need to find all instances of 32 and kill them. Self.timer control.max width. Okay, so if I was to do that, and then go ahead and change this, the bar just moves. It's super awesome. The only thing we don't have is loading that value from file. That's, or rather, populating the scroll bar on start. Here, let's take a snapshot before I destroy something. Fix. a few timer control with issues. Oh. Oh. There's some chat that looks German. Awesome. Thanks, Eldeleth. Okay. Populating the scroll bar. Oh, actually, the real question, hang on. Did we see that that value was loaded? Oh, we might have seen that. Hang on. Yes, it's automatically getting saved and loaded because it's part of settings. All we need to do is hook it up to this bar. Oh, okay, I'm excited. Okay, I was going to stop, but one more thing. Just one more thing. So when we are looking at this value, where is it? Dot width. Settings Windows dot width. This is the value we're going to work with. And for the value, instead of setting to 1, which is no longer correct anyway, what we really want to do is, convert settings.width to a multiplier. So we did something very similar below. So if we have something like 0.016, we want that to get converted into about 1x if the resolution is 1920-ish. Mine's a little bit smaller because I'm in windowed mode. So local scaling scroll bar value equals, and we have the settings.windows.width. And what do we do with it? Well, before, width equals this. So if we just do some refactoring, we can multiply by screen width, which we're going to need. And then we're going to divide by 32. Maybe. So value times 32 divided by screen width, everything checks out. Thorlor says, use algebra to invert the expression. Now that is what I was doing mentally. We'll see how well that worked. Not so much. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. So if the, you know what, let's go ahead and populate this. First of all, just so I can see it easily. Okay, so the scaling is that. So what I would hope is 0.04033 times 19, that's about 04, divided by 32. We would hope to get, oh, that's a value of 2. Yeah, that's not right at all. Or is it? Now, so 0.04, 1904, that would be 76 pixels. Well, that might be right. Oh, but we needed to multiply it by the 10. We forgot. I completely forgot about that. So times 10. Neat. So by separating that out from this calculation down here, I set myself up for a little bit of a trap there, but that's okay. In fact, if we went ahead and moved this up here, we could use it here. No, absolutely. The self settings width isn't the scaling factor, Thorlor. I just wanted a quick little, quick and dirty debug value to make sure what was saved in the file was what I was expecting it to be. That was a sort of a false flag there. Okay, so we can see the scaling. Okay. I'm going to need to replace this with some localization so that that can be translated by anyone who's a French or German speaker. But in the meantime, it is a quick way for us to verify that that is in fact a 2.5 scaling. And if we go ahead and blow that up to, say, 6 times, or the dreaded 2.49, if we bring that up to 6 times, and go ahead and unload and reload, come back in. Excellent. I was wondering about that. So we're going to want to go ahead and let's see. Let's do a math.floor there just for kicks and see if we get the same thing. There we go. Math.round might be better, but okay, that gives a reliable thing. Now, math.floor, not so much. I would like a rounding of that. So add round helper function use on scroll bar label starting value. Neat. Now change the resolution and reload the plugin. Yeah, well, hang on a second. So this is a 6 times. So we can go ahead and change the size of the game. We can unload the plugin. Oh, it's already unloaded. We can reload the plugin. And let's see what happens. Okay, we get something that looks like, well, it's hard to tell, actually. Oh, but we saw a scaling of 3.8. So we can see that, yes, it does seem to have done something. Now, if I do a scaling of 10 times, well, that's an interesting question. Should it have changed like that? Well, let's make that bigger. Let's see what happens. Scaling 15 times. Okay, obviously it's taking resolution changes into account. Yeah. But let's go ahead and bring that back down to a 1x. I'm not even sure if I should have a less than, like, I can't even read that. Like, what would the point be? That's okay. So if I unload that, make that as small as I can, load the plugin, and go ahead and set the scaling down to, whoa, well, that's going to be harder to, there we go. So yeah, I can't read that. I'm not sure what the point would be, but you know, we can do that. Sweet. Well, kind of maximized it, which throws it onto the other window. Okay. Well, I feel like that's proportionally about the same size as the window. I agree. I'm still not 100% convinced that that's the right behavior, but it's a start. You know, it's great. Yeah, Thurler, absolutely. The scroll bar might be out of range, and that's a thing to think about because ultimately, if we're at 15 times x, is that a right thing, or should we cap it? Should we go ahead and do a maximum of 10? Scroll bar value could be greater than 10 after resolution changes. Constrain value to 1 to 10 to fix. Cool. Now that's a future me problem. But what we've got here is something. Let's go check what changes we've done. Okay, so we have just loaded the initial values for that scroll bar. Awesome. Load scroll bar and label value from this saved setting. Cool. All right. And some more stuff. Awesome. Oh, that's very exciting. Yeah, I think constraining to no less than 0.5 or probably 1. I don't see the point of going less than 1x other than as a party trick, you know? Look at what I can do. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But constrain it to no less than 1, no more than 10 on resolution changes. I think we'll, yes, it won't perfectly preserve the value, but I think it's fine. It's close enough. It's just like if a window would be off screen, it's okay to shove it on screen. You're not perfectly preserving the location, but you're getting the spirit of it. It's fine. Okay, well, I gotta say, I'm super excited to get a numerical counter on here and to get scaling and get that scaling saved to file. This is just super great. I think it needs a few more tweaks before version 101 gets pushed out, but we're already well on the way. So, cool. I'm going to take a drink here. If there's any final comments or questions coming into chat, but we'll have time for them. But I think we're going to wrap up tonight. Thanks, Little Redhead. It's true. Being safe on the Town Hall of Breeze roof had led me to dying 0 times. Oh, Exogenesis asks, a bit unrelated. It is not unrelated. It's plugin related. That's awesome. What do you need to do to add a plugin to Compendium? So this is a manual process. If you go to the plugin Compendium, when you search for it, it can be a little bit confusing because there's lots of stuff. But the Lotro plugin Compendium by Lunar Water, which I hope is how you pronounce their name, is, I think, where we want to go. And the way it works is you add a comment saying, hey, can you add this plugin? And then someday they will hopefully come back from vacation or whatever has happened, and then they will add it to the file, and then they will say, it's done. For instance, hello, I've added this, and they'll say added. Now, I haven't actually seen Lunar Water responding to these requests recently. I hope they are okay, and barring that, I hope there's some process by which someone else could go add these if necessary, because the Lotro plugin Compendium is so useful, and it would be a shame if it could not be updated in that way. That being said, add your comment here. Hopefully they will get to it, but that is the process. If you have any questions about it, there's a thorough explanation of the process here. Let me go ahead and link that into chat here. Oh, Thorler says she doesn't respond with messages, only with actions. Fair enough. I have heard she is not as active a player as once, and so even if she's only coming in and adding them once every couple of months, that's still pretty cool because once you're in there for basically forever. So future updates to that plugin are automatically picked up by the system. It's only that first time registration. So yeah. Post it here when Lunar Water gets to it. And as you can see, I've got one waiting here. I'll probably add the 100 Deadly Decoy to this request, but that's basically it. If you have a complicated set of dependencies, you can pre-create your plugin Compendium file. It'll look something like this, and your dependencies will be listed out here. This is the number that you see when you see like info 633. Oh, I'm sorry. I clicked away. Sorry. The Lotro plugin Compendium, this is it, by Lunar Water. And there's a description here for, how to get yourself on here. You can just add a message to the thread here. And let's see. Oh, yes, dependencies. So you can see an example here, right here. So Lotro plugin Compendium will go ahead and install these, I think in the order that you reference them, and then install yours. And so 0 is the turbine files. Everything else is just whatever the number is in the URL for your plugin. So you can pre-generate this. If you don't have any complicated dependencies or any dependencies at all, you don't actually have to do that. The first time Plugin Compendium installs your plugin, it'll generate one of these based off of what it finds on Lotro interface. And so you can use that default generated one and just start distributing from then on with that. But if you have anything more complicated, like dependencies, you can just go ahead and make your own file. You can also check out the plugin compendium file that other plugins come with to check that out. For instance, we just, in Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, we just installed a Thorolore plugin asset browser, so we can come in and take a look at that plugin compendium file. So this is an example of a working plugin compendium file. Change everything in here to your needs, your ID, your name, your version, your author name. You could self-generate this by looking at someone else's. But this example has all those things too. And is actually a little bit more complicated, so maybe it helps with their different situations. Okay, that's an excellent question. Thank you for bringing it up. Lotro Plugin Compendium is a gift to plugin users and to plugin authors. And so I'm super looking forward to the next time Linowara comes back and adds the next couple of plugins. And hopefully I will have remembered to put Hunter Deadly Decoy in the list by then. Okay, Atla, thank you for responding to Wolf Loki. Okay, that is awesome. Okay, I have talked myself out of things to talk about. So I think, unless there were any other urgent things, we're going to call that the end of tonight's streaming about plugins. This was super fun. I'm really pleased with everything we've done today. That being said, that's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins. I do hope to see you all next week. And until then, keep plugging along. Bye-bye now.